Bad Fruit Podcast, and Merry Christmas. It's the most wonderful time of the year with chestnuts roasting on an open fire and everybody remembering the silent night when Jesus was born. Whether you're a Christian or not, you probably take some time this time of year to give gifts to friends and family and drink some hot chocolate and, I don't know, maybe some eggnog too. And today I am joined by my friend, and we've known each other for a while, and you've been on the show before. This is Michael, my good friend Michael.
Good afternoon.
Do you like eggnog?
I don't typically do.
No, I don't
eggnog,
either.
no.
I can't drink it. It's got milk in it, and I don't do dairy, so.
I do the milk, you know that. But
If they had like almond milk or oat milk eggnog, I probably could do that. But
that's probably a thing.
But a lot of people do like eggnog, and that's not what we're talking about today, though. We are going to talk about Jesus because, I mean, it is Christmas, right? Why not talk about Jesus this time of year?
Fair enough.
No, so
It makes me think of a story real quick.
Okay.
Someone had mentioned the secular Christmas, that they really like secular Christmas music, and I was just kind of thinking that's an oxymoron, but all right.
yeah, so I is that like Mariah Carey's song? Is that
I think
secular
so.
Christmas?
It's secular Christmas.
Okay.
But it's an oxymoron.
Sure, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of different ways to celebrate Christmas, I suppose. But for you and I know you've been doing Advent this year as well,
Yeah.
and we do that at our church, so that's really cool. And a couple weeks ago, I talked about Simeon, which I think is just a really fun story that's kind of sometimes overlooked during this time of year. We're talking about Jesus and his birth and all of that, and just kind of how he was just eagerly and anticipating the coming Messiah. And really, I mean, that's how we're like Simeon now, eagerly waiting for the Messiah to return. And so there's a lot of cool parallels there. So today, I kind of want to pick up a conversation that you and I were having on the phone yesterday. And it was really cool. We were talking about the Incarnation of Christ and the physicality of Jesus. And so this time of year, we obviously remember the birth of Christ, and you know, we'll read Isaiah where it talks about the coming Messiah and the names that Jesus will have: Mighty Counselor, Prince of Peace. And so we also remember that it says that, you know, the virgin will conceive, and so, you know, here's the fulfillment of that in Christ. And so we talked about this in our gospel episode that we did, which I'll share a link to that if you're curious about Michael's previous time on the podcast. But we talked about that Jesus was physically born and actually born, like he's a real person. And what we were talking about yesterday, which I thought was really cool, is he actually died too. Like, he's born, yes, he's born like into this world as a man, and he also died.
Yeah, I think we tend to over spiritualize some elements of our faith, and a lot of that has to do with like more pagan thought, and even the religion that pops up and is constantly kind of plaguing. We see a lot of John's epistles dealing with this idea of Gnosticism, and physical is bad, spiritual is good, and we may sometimes, without realizing it, you know, as Christians, forget the physicality of what God has made, and also forget the physicality of really Christ. And I think it's easy anytime you're dealing with something that's really, really familiar, right? When we're dealing with something like Luke, and, you know, we read it every Christmas. We just read this stuff. We maybe believe it, but sometimes you can get to a point where you don't really truly take a second to define what you believe about it, and you just say you believe it. You do what you've always done. Incarnation of Christ, it's a great time to step back and realize that we do actually, for real, believe, you know, as an event of history, but it's something that we know to be true, and we believe that the God of the universe became man in a sense that he was no less man than you and I are a man.
Right.
Like, there's literally we're not more of a man, and he was like, well, he was kind of a man. Jesus was 100% a man.
Mm-hmm.
And we did talk about this on our gospel episode. You can't belittle the humanity of Christ any more than you can belittle that Jesus is God.
Right.
Like, he is no less God. It was an act of addition. Jesus 100% God and 100% man, but he lived in the real flesh like you and I, without the sin nature, virgin birth,
Right.
but he was born physically in the world. And when we say Jesus died, we don't just go, hey, he died.
Yeah.
He died. He died. He was really dead.
Not mostly dead.
Not just kind of dead. And then most people were like, yeah, because that's how the resurrection happened. But no, it's also a part of the resurrection to remember that we don't believe that, hey, as a soul one day, like I'm going to be like the soul outside of a body floating around, and I'll have this new existence, and I'll be the spiritual being. That is not within the Christian worldview. That's not what that is. That's a secular or not secular pagan idea. So Jesus, the body that he had, he physically rose from the dead for real physically. It wasn't just the spiritual thing. And, even Christ says, like, hey, don't cling to me, is kind of the way it's translated sometimes, but the idea of like, hey, he does let them physically touch, right? Thomas does that. I mean, the other disciples do it before Thomas at that later date that we see in John. Oh, it's 8 days later by Jewish, so like a week later. He physically touches him. So
right, Jesus isn't a ghost.
No, and now he did supernatural things, ends up in a locked room. He's God,
Yeah.
But he was physically there, and they physically touched him. And so our faith is one that Jesus is the God-man, and when we think of resurrecting one day, we will resurrect to a new body physically. Like not just like in a spiritual sense where we go off to be some soul. That is not a part of the Christian faith. And if you think to one of Paul's sermons, which he preached, the Mars Hill sermon, as soon as he got to the resurrection, he lost the crowd. But what you need to understand is that crowd had no problem with believing in an afterlife that you live in spiritually.
Yeah.
The resurrection of a physical body was the difference between him and the pagan religions, and that's where he lost the crowd. So that is a huge part of the birth of Christ, and it does us well to take time to sit down and really actually contemplate that somehow the God of the universe decided incarnation was truly 100% dwelling within 100% man as well. And that's a mysterious, concept to us in some ways. Like it does definitely inspire great wonder, and it has through church history, and it very well should, but we can spend a lot of time thinking about that. And there's still complexities of it we probably don't understand. But what we do know is he was 100% man in the flesh.
Yeah. And I think it was really cool in church a couple weeks ago. The pastor, he was talking about how we a lot of times say fully God, fully man. And he said, maybe another way to think about it that might be, beneficial as well is to say truly God and truly man. Because I think sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with saying 100% or fully, but like it's not a percentage thing. He wasn't like 90% man while he was on earth and 10% God. And then when he goes to heaven, he's now, 90% God and 10% man. No, he's truly God in the flesh, but he was also truly a man. And, like I'm sure he stubbed his toe, and I'm sure that, if he got a cut working on a project or something, it bled. Like he and we know he did bleed because he bleeds on the cross. So like he is a flesh and blood man minus the sinful flesh of
Right.
Adam.
Sin nature, yeah.
But when he's resurrected, like you said, and I love that, he's resurrected in the body. He's not a ghost. He's not this ethereal being. And I think sometimes as Christians, we tend to think about heaven. Like we think, oh, my loved ones died and they're in heaven now. And they're these ethereal beings, and there's angels, and it's just bright lights and everything like that. And I think a lot of that is maybe just movies and kind of just popular entertainment that kind of makes us think about those things. But when we actually look at like the truth of it, and this time of year, I think as we do remember Christ's birth, it's also really cool to think about like how Simeon is waiting for the Messiah. We're waiting for Christ to return. What's actually going to happen is the resurrection of the dead.
Yeah.
Not a zombie apocalypse,
Yeah.
Like, these aren't just mindless. Like, we will be raised from the dead, and it says there will be a new heaven and new earth. Now, if that means that, like, literally everything is destroyed and brand new things are created, or if things are just perfected, I don't necessarily know the answer to that. But we do know that it will be new and better and perfect, the way that Adam and Eve were, supposed to be perfect in the garden, and so all things will be made new, and we will spend eternity with a physical God King Jesus that we can go up to and touch and talk to and see, and we will be in physical bodies.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
we will interact with people in physical ways. And I think that is something that is so much better. I mean, to me, that's so much better. Like, I look outside and I see trees and I see grass and animals and it's like, that's really cool. Like, nature's really cool. And I remember as a kid thinking, this kind of sucks. One day, like, we're just going to be up in the clouds in heaven, and, like,
Right.
there won't be this, there won't be that, and whatever. And it's like, no, actually, we're going to have all this nature, but perfect. You'll be
Yeah.
able to go up to the animals and to other, like, I don't know exactly what we'll be doing all the time, but I think just that physicality, and it goes against that sort of Gnostic view that a lot of people have, that I think is crept into the church. That, there's kind of two ways that Gnostics kind of get attacked, and they both are really good reasons to attack them. But there's sort of that secret knowledge side of it, but then there's also the sort of physical is bad, spiritual is good. And when we say Gnostic in this episode today, we're talking about that aspect of it, of like, oh, the physical things are evil, dirty, gross. And I think the idea for a lot of people that God got dirty is just blows their mind.
Sure. Yeah. And it should, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it is kind of radical, right?
Yeah, I mean and this is the good news. I mean, the good news is, that God has condescended to our level to rescue us from sin, but the resurrection of our bodies is the good news. I mean, if you think about some of the old Christmas hymns that many of us are singing right now, there's a lot of references to that resurrection perspective that the Christmas story is bringing him, and this is why we celebrate it. I mean, it doesn't take much to read through some of those hymns and see about the curse being destroyed. He came to do away with the curse. Joy to the World deals with that, or born that man no more may die. The picture of born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. So you look at these. That's a improved by George Whitefield a little bit, some of the lyrics, but John Wesley hymn. Felix Mendelssohn wrote the music. I'm getting the music nerd. He was a Messianic Jew, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
But and the reason we know who Bach is. So
okay.
He found his music, and so, but we probably shouldn't get into music.
You have a degree in music, right?
Yeah. So
so we could spend all day talking about that.
Get away from that. But anyway, a lot of these hymns show the theology that we believed. And sometimes, I mean, there are bad hymns out there too, right?
Sure.
You can find bad theology, but a lot of them show what the church has believed about some of these issues for a long time. But it is important to think about how the gospel relates to eschatology, because it is what makes it good news.
Mm-hmm.
And eschatology is probably a huge topic for us to get into. And there's a lot of different layers of what you can believe and still really
sure. And eschatology means, for those who aren't aware, that means like end times things, kind of end of the world type stuff.
Right. And that theology is a little bit different, but pretty much all of the major main ones believe what Revelation says when it says that literally the kingdom of God comes to earth. So when we say the Lord's Prayer, right, as Jesus taught us to pray, you're looking at the kingdom of God wins right here on this planet. God restores this planet. It's the making new of the earth, right?
Yeah.
So God has victory here, and that's part of what the gospel. That's why it's the gospel. That's why it's the good news.
Right.
Is the curse is defeated. Death itself is defeated, and the physical resurrection is a part of what we believe. So sometimes we just gloss over that. We say it. You don't really think about what it means.
Yeah.
Do we know what it means? And kind of relating the physicality of Christ, which, of course, Christ is a spiritual being. God is spirit, and he was, did not become God, like what we mentioned before. And we're not saying spiritual is bad and physical
No,
is
not at all.
good. Gnostics kind of say the opposite of that, but there are evil spiritual works out there, like right with
Right.
the devil, and so there's evil spiritual works. Then obviously God Himself is spirit, and then in the same way, God became physical, and there's sinful physical things, but Christ was born without a sin nature.
Yeah.
I feel like in this topic too, we'd be a little negligent to not mention First John, and to reference the importance that John puts on this in First John, which is really about this topic. A lot of it is about this
Right.
topic. Is the idea that Christ came in the flesh, and that if you want to know whether someone has a spirit of the Antichrist or if someone has a spirit that is from God, the best test to that is that they believe that Christ came and that He came in the flesh, which is both a reference to the fact that He came, that's meaning that He was an eternal being. He was begotten. He's an eternal being that has always been. That is that He is God, a member of the Trinity. It's also a reference to Him being a man, actually a man. So
Yeah.
that He came and He came in the flesh. If you deny that, literally the scary word Antichrist, like the spirits of the Antichrist, used plural at times in John. There's a specific figure that's sometimes
Sure.
mentioned as well, but it's mentioned a spirit of someone who denies that Christ came and came in the flesh. So when we don't align our thinking correctly with what the Bible teaches about this and what our historic creeds and confessions teach about this, we've moved into a really sketchy place according to John. So it's really important that we have the right
Right.
thinking on this.
No, you're absolutely right. And I like that you mentioned our creeds, because our creeds do talk about the resurrection to come. I mean, that's included in our creeds for a reason. That is Orthodox Christian views. And actually, St. Nicholas, according to legend, at the Council of Nicaea, punched Arius because Arius had Trinitarian heresies, and he just got so upset about it. And and it's a great story to like, here's St. Nicholas, the one that you might associate with Santa Claus this time of year, punching somebody who was not Orthodox. So I mean, I don't know how much more Christian you can get than defending Orthodoxy with your fists, right? Like. Haven't got that far in the podcast yet. We haven't thrown any punches at anybody. So, but I mean, at the end of the day, what I was really hoping to get people to think about, and I hope that you will think about this, is as you take some time, and hopefully you do have the ability to take some time over the next couple days, and maybe you already have this month, is to think about who Jesus is and how He came to earth as a actual man, and how when He died, He actually died. When He was resurrected from the dead, He was actually resurrected into a physical body. And now He reigns and rules and is our King of Kings as a physical being. And when He returns, He will be physical, and He will raise us from the dead into a physical world. And we have the life everlasting with Him. And that is good news. That death is a product of the fall. It's a product of sin. It was not the intention. And that's why we mourn when people die, because we weren't supposed to die. And because of Christ, we can have eternal life in a physical realm with our God. And that is good news.
It is.
I mean, I don't know. I can't really think of much better news than the fact that God loved us so much to do that for us.
I think of this C.S. Lewis quote I'm going to read here real quick, which is related to the incarnation of Christ there, and it's from the Chronicles of Narnia. It's actually in the books. But once in our world, a stable had something in it that was bigger than our whole world. Is the picture of God coming to the earth and living physically. And yeah, we can't belittle that. We can't belittle the physicality of our faith. Our faith is certainly a spiritual one. We must be born of the Spirit. We're also physically born, right?
Yeah.
So we need to be physically born, and then we need to be born of the Spirit. And so the picture here is that you can't belittle that element. We are a physical soul, and we also are a physical man and also a soul. We have a dual nature, even you and I do. And our soul doesn't exist apart from a physical body. That's not a concept within Christianity.
Yeah.
And it's important just to keep that in mind. But yeah, it's certainly something that I think, if you don't take time to really think about it, it's really easy to end up thinking something that's different. And I feel like when we do that, the cause and the joy you were just mentioning, I think the cause is you do belittle the joy because you kind of don't believe the truth. You think, oh, yeah, I mean, like there's something spiritual there about this where, that's a great spiritual thing. It isn't just a great spiritual thing. There is a great spiritual element to our faith, but there's a great physical element to our faith. Like we believe for real that we will be resurrected in physical bodies and experience God's creation apart from sin. And once again, we're waiting for that. Like you said, the Israelites had a long history of waiting for the delivery into the promised land. They waited for Christ coming, and once again, we're still waiting for Christ today. It's just a part of being the people of God. It's been that way from the beginning. That we're people waiting on our King to come back, and He will come back for real, physically, and we get to experience the joy of all those things.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for coming on the podcast, and hopefully we'll get you back on again here, maybe in the next month or so. And but Merry Christmas to you and your family, and to all of our listeners. Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.